Indiana hasn't lost yet. They could lose this weekend.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're going to pick every game in the Week 10. I'm going to tell you in the Big 10. I mean, Week 10, Big 10, it's all complicated and whatnot. Nick Saban's not going to return to college football. There's a, shall we call it a rumor, report, whatever you want to say, out there, speculation. Yeah, that's just not going to happen. But first, Jacob Goins, Locked On Indiana Hoosiers. This is the story of college football so far this year, Jacob, in my eyes, because 3-9 at a historic non-football power. And sure, you could look on paper and say Curt Cignetti's a good hire. He's won everywhere he's been. Not even the most optimistic Indiana fans in the world saw this coming, right? And let's just start there. Nobody saw this coming, right? They look unbeatable.
It's funny because when Curt Cignetti was hired, right, it was, okay, he's a really good coach with a really good track record with quotes that are just unbelievable. I'm sure you Googled to make sure that he's a good winner, right? I mean, he's just that type of dude who...
Gotta Google him. You gotta Google him, Jacob.
Google this man because he's all over the internet. And what's crazy is you knew he was going to be a different style of coach. You knew he was hard-hitting, he was hard-nosed, and he didn't put up with any crap. And that's what Indiana needed. But nobody predicted immediate success to this level. And if anybody says they did, they're lying, because that would have been idiotic to say, right, at the start of the season or even when he was hired. And I think the way he did it is a couple of ways. He kept a lot of guys around. He brought a lot of his James Madison guys, that is coaching staff and players. And then he just found a quarterback. He found Curtis Rourke out of Ohio in Maction. He was one of us watching that on Tuesday nights, apparently. And he said, that's my man. That's my guy. And just started over and reset the whole program. And man, here we are. We're the biggest story in college football. College Game Day was here last week. We shined on the main stage. And it seems like this team is unbeatable. And they're actually good while doing it.
Yeah, and they have Michigan State on the road this week. And here's why I say they can lose this game. No one plays perfect football every week. I don't care who you're talking about. Georgia in its national title season struggled at Missouri before they were really good. They struggled at Kentucky. It was not always easy. And when you look at Indiana's schedule so far, no one's touched them. Jacob, Washington was the closest to doing so a week ago, and it was 31-17 and didn't always even feel that close. It was for a little, and then you look up and they've won by 14 points. So I have that in the back of my mind. They're not going to play 12 perfect games, even if they go 12-0. They're not going to play their best football every single week. Nobody does. Oregon's the number one team in the country right now. Go look at how they played against Idaho week 1. They stunk. They stunk and had to find a way to win against an FCS opponent. And now they're on top of the college football world, which, go figure. The sport's just wild and crazy. But the other thing is, when I look at Michigan State, no, they're not a great team. I don't even know if they're a good team. Are they a dreadful team? I also don't think that is the answer to how you assess Michigan State football at this point in the year. Their rushing totals the last couple of weeks, just over 160 and over 200. If they can have that sort of success against Indiana, I think they could have something at home. I think they could give them problems.
Well, it's crazy because I thought they were building momentum, right? I thought it's like, okay, they got to win. Here they come. They're going to get a couple before Indiana, and then they fall flat on their face again. And here comes Indiana, where you're right. I mean, even the games that we've played up to this point haven't been perfect. I mean, there's been some situations where Indiana did that against Washington with a backup quarterback, and Curtis Rourke has a couple of interceptions. But you got to think this is a team that went several games to start the year where they didn't turn it over. They don't trail in football games. They take the football, they score, and they don't give it up. And you're right. I think there's a game out there somewhere where it could go wrong. And why not a game on the road at Michigan State, a team that is average at best, but has nothing to win, but has nothing to lose at the same time. And good news is, I don't think Indiana's going to get caught looking ahead, right? Michigan on that schedule, Ohio State on that schedule. Where's our friend Jay Stevens around here somewhere? They're starting to shake a little bit up in Columbus. And then you have Purdue at the end of the year. And Indiana has everything to play for. But I don't think this team gets caught in a look-ahead situation. I think Curt Cignetti has proven already to this point that he does things the right way. One game at a time, nameless, faceless opponent. Show up, do your thing, and good things are going to happen. And I think Indiana can do that again on Saturday.
Here, let me pour a little bit of gasoline on the upset fire here. I'm just pouring a little, and I haven't even made my prediction yet for this Big Ten matchup because that comes in segment number 2 on today's show. Jonathan Smith has won games in the past that he shouldn't have won. And when Jonathan Smith has that mentality of, you know what, we got nothing to lose here. We got everything to gain. He's seeking that signature marquee win. I think that's Iowa right now. I think Iowa at home, I think that was a good, solid win. I thought they'd win that football game, and indeed they did. But don't be surprised if you see an onside kick, a fake field goal or a fake punt, some trick plays. I think Jonathan Smith could kind of throw the kitchen sink from a playbook standpoint with Brian Lindgren at this Indiana defense. But here's where I back off. You know, I was trying to kind of talk myself into the upset because I'm like, it's got to be coming at some point. It's on the road. Michigan State's not horrible. They're just not very good. Aiden Childs can make some big plays. But then when you think about Indiana, you think, oh man, they throw the football. Curtis Rourke is amazing. He's doing a great job. And he is. And Curtis Rourke, I believe, is expected back this week. That's the expectation, yes?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's day-to-day for now.
If he's not there, raise the upset meter to be sure. But then you look at Indiana's defensive numbers and you go, wait, they're only allowing 86 yards a game on the ground? That's the pivot point for me. If Michigan State is going to just hang around, they cannot throw the football and keep up with Indiana. If they're going to win this game, they have to limit possessions, they have to run the football, they have to chew the clock and, play a 24-20 sort of football game. But to do that, they've got to be able to run the ball, and Indiana in that department this year, they've been stout.
And that's what this Indiana defense hangs their hat on is you're not going to run the football on us. You could throw it if you want to, but we got dudes who are going to lock you down on the outside, plus linebackers that can either drop in coverage or just bring delayed pressure. I mean, D'Angelo Pons was the Roy Player of the Week on Locked on Hoosiers, had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 that started the whole game against Washington. Like, this defense is stacked on all 3 levels, and they don't give up big plays. Washington had 2 plays over 30 yards, I think, the entire afternoon against this Indiana defense. Like, they keep everything in front of them. They don't break down. They don't have miscommunications. And knock on wood, outside of Curtis Rourke, this team is extremely healthy, especially on the defensive side of the football. They had some issues on the O-line early in the year with injuries, but that seems to be fine. If you want to talk about running the ball on offense, that's what Indiana likes to do to start out, and they've got 2 workhorses on that side. But yeah, Michigan State's going to have to do something different. They got to do something that's out of the ordinary and catch Indiana sleeping. But Spencer, I think they have to do it several times because, again, Curt Cignetti's such a good seasoned coach. You only burn him once, and he'll learn.
When you say they have to do something different, something immediately popped into my head. I'll tell you what that is next, and we'll pick every game in the Big Ten. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time, which has this great feature. It's called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want to get tickets to. Game Time's got it with panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect. Take the guesswork out, not in, out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So the one thing, if you think Michigan State needs to come up with something new, something they haven't done a ton of this year, but could maybe bring to the table to try and pull an upset in Bloomington, Jacob, it's the quarterback run game. Aiden Childs is a mobile guy. They have not been exceptional throwing the football so far this year. He does only have one interception in his last 3 games. I very much like that. But when you say there's an extra element, that was right where my mind went to is, look, it may just be in situations like red zone or 3rd and 4th and short. I'd expect to see Aiden Childs on the move as much in this game as he has been all season. I don't think that's enough because Indiana is just a wagon and a half. I think Michigan State can hang around early. I don't think they can do it for 4 quarters. I'll take Indiana 31-17.
Ooh, okay. So you have Indiana winning and then what? Probably pulling away late, probably close to the first half.
I think this is one of those games that is within reach, maybe gets to be a 1-score game in the 3rd quarter, and then Michigan State runs out of steam.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, to the mobile quarterback thing really quick, Indiana hasn't seen it much. Washington brought in their backup a couple of times in running situations, and the really mobile quarterback that Indiana has seen was Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, but they held him in check fairly well, and it wasn't even a run game with him. It was more of a, oh, crap, the play's not there. Let's see if I can make something happen. And again, that's where I talk about the discipline of this Indiana defense. They just don't give up on plays. So if we're jumping into picks, I'll take Indiana. I'll take 34-14. I think Indiana will roll in this game. They're favored by more than a touchdown on the road, and especially if Curtis Rourke plays, Indiana rolls.
How about the game of the week, not just in the Big Ten, but in all of college football? Ohio State at Penn State. Look, it's a tough matchup here statistically for those trying to make a pick because Ohio State's record under Ryan Day against top 5 teams, not very good. Penn State's record against everybody not named Michigan, Ohio State, somehow even worse. I like Ohio State here. I think this is a point where Ohio State reminds everyone they can win the national championship and also the Big Ten. I know everyone's riding Oregon, and that's fair because Oregon has been really good, but I still think Ohio State's a really good football team, and they were, a second or 2 perhaps away from beating Oregon on the road, and that win would be really impressive if it had gone that way. So I like Ohio State to go in to Penn State. I know the environment's going to be crazy. I'm going to talk more about this game tomorrow, but boy, I like Ohio State in this spot, 27-20.
Here's what we can't forget, though. Ohio State's a play or 2 away from losing to Nebraska, and that's a team that Indiana...
Wake-up call. We call that a wake-up call.
Oh, okay. It wasn't a reality check. It was a wake-up call?
You call whatever you like. They're going to snap into focus right there.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, Ohio State has to show up and play well. And I'm going to pick the Buckeyes because I'm still not sold on Penn State. I've been screaming this on our Big Ten squad shows for weeks now. I'm just not sold on Penn State. If they
okay, me neither, but they keep winning football games. And I can't
don't know how. I don't know how.
I know. I can't not give them credit for that they did come back against USC, that they handled Wisconsin on the road. I picked them to lose both those games. I'm tripling down on the anti-Penn State thing here, but I have that same sense.
But that's why I'm picking Ohio State. Until Penn State shows me I'm not buying into it. If you win this game, okay, I'm sold. And then I think Ohio State, we start questioning a little bit, but I will give Penn State credit if they win this game. I just don't think they do. Give me the Buckeyes. I'll take 31-24 Ohio State on the road at Happy Valley.
All right, let's fly through the rest of these Big Ten picks. USC goes to Washington, kind of an underrated, interesting game. Loser is under 500, and I think that's a worse situation for USC, and it's why I think they win the football game. I just have more trust in USC that finally won a game against Rutgers last week. Give me the Trojans 28-17.
I'm going to go the other way. Just coming off a game against Washington, I said it early this week on Locked On Hoosiers, that team is still good enough to beat somebody, and I think this weekend is that team. I think USC is that team, and this weekend is that time. I'll take Washington in the upset at home there in Seattle. Give me the Huskies. How
about another under-the-radar, not huge implications game that is going to be competitive and fun? Wisconsin at Iowa. Boy, it's hard to go into Kinnick Stadium and win. Wisconsin looked like they'd figured things out. Didn't do it as much as I thought against Penn State last week. I don't know. I go back and forth on this one, Jacob. I really do, meaning I should go with the home team, Iowa 2017.
It's criminal that you're making me pick this game. I mean, the total's like 40 points at FanDuel. It's ugly. It's disgusting.
40 and a half. 40 and a half.
Hey, you got to give credit to half points in a game like this. They may need it for entertainment purposes. So I'll take Iowa because they're at home. If this is in Madison, I pick Wisconsin. But I'll take Iowa strictly because, yeah, they're at home.
Speaking of games with a point total of 40 and a half, Nebraska hosting UCLA. I think this is when Nebraska reminds everyone, hey, we are actually a good football team. Give me Nebraska big here, 38-10.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska's getting, about a touchdown or so at home?
6.5.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think they showed something against Ohio State after getting blasted by Indiana. Nebraska had chances to win that game. They just couldn't do it. And so I'm with you. I think Nebraska is still a good football team. I think they're better than what some people are giving them credit for because of their recent lack of success. Give me Nebraska big. And, man, what a disaster it is in UCLA right now. Hey, basketball season's almost here, though.
Illinois hosting Minnesota. Illini looking for a bounce back after they got trounced at Oregon last week. Minnesota, I'm not surprised that PJ Fleck is 3-2 in the Big Ten right now. I don't think they have a super high ceiling, but their floor is clearly pretty solid. Brosmer's been playing some pretty solid ball at quarterback, or at least good enough. There's only 1 point spread in the Big Ten this week that is double digits, and we'll get to that one. That's Oregon and Michigan in just a moment. But again, I go the home team here. Illinois is a home underdog, played Oregon last week. I think Brett Bielema's got a solid team. Yeah, they could be overperforming compared to what their talent is on paper, but they're a winning football team. They are at home in Champaign. Give me Illinois. Watch this, 17-14.
Oh, that's so disgusting, man.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, that's gross. If this game was in Minnesota, I would pick them because this would be the classic PJ Fleck game that he would just come out and win for no reason, where Minnesota's still not a great football team, but they would beat a ranked team at home. Not going to happen, though. I think Brett Bielema's got Illinois rolling. They're as good as they're going to be, but they're still a lot better than Minnesota. So I'll take Illinois, the Fighting Illini being in Champaign.
How about the bottom dweller game? Does Purdue win their first conference game of the year at home? This game is a sub 2-point spread. Northwestern a slight edge. I don't know if I can go on record and take Purdue. I think I go with Northwestern and David Braun. They haven't been great this year, but they've shown glimpses a couple of times. I'll take Northwestern, but give me the points to kind of fly up in this one. 31-28.
As Lee Corso has said so many great times, go Hoosiers and beat Purdue. Give me Northwestern to win. I'll take an ugly score in this one, though. I'll take like 20-13.
Yeah, that's a Colin Cowherd score right there. Every Blazing 5 pick for Colin Cowherd is, I'll take the Colts to win in cover, 27-23.5. It's like no one has ever had that score in a football game. What's the score going to be? Oregon, Michigan. I think Oregon goes in. They're favored by over 2 touchdowns. I don't think Michigan can get to more than 10 points. I think they're going to see the same sorts of struggles that Illinois did a week ago. This Oregon defense is really, really good. Jacob, on the road, I think Michigan's defense can slow down the Oregon offense more than others have, but I think this looks a lot like Texas-Michigan from week 2 in the Big House. Give me the Ducks 31-6.
Yeah, what a game this could have been, right? I mean, what a matchup this is. Oregon at the Big House. I mean, now it's the number 1 team in the country. I know you probably don't know much about that, but they are the number 1 team in the nation.
I heard they're number 1 on some podcast somewhere. Yeah,
somewhere. I think maybe in the Lockdown Podcast Network. Not sure about that.
Might have to look around.
Oregon, number 1 team in the country in the Big House. A matchup that on paper, the logos are great, but the game will not be. I'll take Oregon easily here. 31-13. Oregon gets another nice win. I like the Texas-Michigan comparison there. I think that's going to be very similar to what you see on Saturday.
Jacob Goins, Locked On Indiana Hoosiers. They're undefeated. They're probably underranked given what their resume is right now. Yeah, I don't disagree with that particular notion. Here's what I do disagree with: Nick Saban returning to college football at West Virginia. Oh, give me a break. We're talking about that next. Nick Saban returning to college. Just stop it. Just stop. I gotta. Goodness. The beauty of the modern age is that this is my job. And I love my job. It is great. I can reach a lot of you in a relatively simple manner. The downside of the mass media age is you get rumors flying around that don't actually have a basis in reality. So my favorite piece that was covering this particular matter, I'm going to talk about why, even if it were a legitimate rumor, which it does not appear to be, it wouldn't make any sense anyway. On the Sports Illustrated page for West Virginia, this is Skylar Callahan. I think I'm pronouncing his first name correctly there. Nick Saban to West Virginia, that's not happening, folks. Rumors with no basis are flying around, so it's time to put an axe to them. And he does indeed put an axe to them. So the basis of these particular rumors are rooted in the idea that Nick Saban does have historical ties to the state of West Virginia. And, well, that's about it. That's about it. And in the internet age, you can just get cycling. You just get people going. You just get them churning, thinking, and connecting a couple of dots, and boom, it can take off. This would make absolutely, positively no sense. 3 reasons. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on each reason, but 3 reasons why it would not make any sense. Reason number 1, why on earth would Nick Saban go to West Virginia, which is not only a Big 12 school, but is about to be, depending on how the final few games of the season go for Neil Brown and company, whether Saban would come on as an assistant, which was speculated about, or be the head coach or anything of the sorts. Why on earth would he go to West Virginia? That is Nick Saban. That is the greatest this would be like Bill Belichick, who has, of course, retired and I think probably wants to coach again in football one day, going to the Panthers. Like there's just a disconnect here. But it's even more severe than that because of the disparities in, money and brand power in college football. West Virginia makes no sense. This is the greatest coach in the history of the sport. A guy who many, myself included, would vote to elect college football commissioner if there were one, and the sport would probably be better off if that were to take place, but it doesn't appear as if we're anywhere close to that, so we're at the mercy of television executives and conference commissioners in the meantime. So Nick Saban, if he decides to come back to coaching, do you know how quickly Florida would fire Billy Napier? Even if Billy Napier won 8 games this year, do you know how quickly they would remove him from that position to hire Nick Saban? He could go get any job that he wants. Heck, Alabama fans, at the very least, some might take him back. I think Alabama would take him back, and I don't think they would, but I think Alabama would take Nick Saban back before Nick Saban went to go coach at West Virginia. And West Virginia can be a solid job in the Big 12. We have not seen it at its peak, in its glory days for quite some time. It can get back there in the new look Big 12. I don't have any doubts about that. I've got plenty of doubts that just because Nick Saban has spent some time there and was on staff once upon a time, or whatever ties people are trying to, connect, I just, no, that just doesn't make any sense. A guy who can go into a car parking lot not a parking lot, but into a dealership. A guy who can go into the dealership and walk away with the most expensive car on the lot is not going to walk away with a beat up 18-year-old car that's on the lot for a couple $1,000. He's not going to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that particular car. I have one of those cars. I've got a 24-year-old car. I love it to death. I'm going to drive. It is fantastic. It does everything else that other people's cars do, and it does it for a lot less money than a lot of other cars cost. But there is no way that if Nick Saban were to return to college coaching, he'd go to the Big 12. No. I respect the Big 12, and it's beneath Nick Saban. Those two thoughts can be held by the same person at the same time. So that's the first reason. That's the first reason Nick Saban coming back. That doesn't make any sense. The second reason is the idea that Nick Saban would return to college football does not bear in mind why he left in the first place. Did he leave because he wasn't capable of winning? Did he leave because the game was passing him by? No. Last time I checked, won the SEC, beat the 2-time reigning national champions in the SEC title game, and went to the playoff. And his team was 1 4th down stop away from having a chance to play for another national championship. So it's not as if he wasn't good enough to be a head coach in college football. The reason he left is because And we have seen this with other coaches in college football, but especially in college basketball as well. The game itself is not passing by. He's adapted to the new era of offensively driven football. It used to be LSU and Alabama would play games and nobody would score a touchdown. There was a 9-6 game in Tuscaloosa once upon a time. I mean, it's an all-time game. I remember it very well. Those games don't exist anymore. Those games are not around. You have to adapt. And he did. He's a defensive guy. They still prioritized defense very heavily while he was there. But guess what? They recruited big-time offensive players. So they weren't being left behind. The reason that Nick Saban got out of coaching is because he didn't want to deal with all of the craziness right now. I don't think it's realignment because Alabama's not going anywhere. The SEC is in a strong position. It's not as if he wasn't financially compensated enough. It's that between the transfer portal and NIL, old school coaches are not as comfortable operating in that space because it requires a different approach. And it's not that the players are doing anything wrong by capitalizing on all this freedom and power that they didn't have before. And I don't think that coaches are doing anything wrong by saying this is not the way, this doesn't allow me to run the program the way that I want it to. It doesn't allow me the opportunity to coach the way I've coached my whole life. I'm 70 plus years old. Why do I suddenly have to change radically the way that we acquire talent? Why is there such a big fundamental shift? These are not small things to deal with NIL in the transfer portal. So those aspects of college football that help drive away Nick Saban or Jay Wright at Villanova, Coach K, Roy Williams, like the list goes on and on. Tony Bennett at Virginia most recently in the college basketball space. And I think it's going to drive Mac Brown out of Chapel Hill here momentarily. Those have not been resolved. There hasn't been a tightening of the rules. There hasn't been an adjustment. There hasn't been a pendulum swing in the other direction. So that's the second reason that Nick Saban would not come back to coach college football right now. It hasn't settled. He left because the temperature got cranked up to 1,000. He said, look, you need to bring it back down to at least 200 or 300, and I can endure that. I don't even know if he said that. I'm just kind of speculating here. But the temperature hasn't been taken down on those matters. So that's reason number 2. And then reason number 3, do you watch him on College Game Day? Do you know what he's making? I don't know if it's public information. Let's see. Let's see if that's available. Saban, no, it doesn't look like that. He also makes, according to Sporting News, he makes $500,000 annually in his new advisory role at Alabama. I'm going to presume that College Game Day has given him in the 6-figure range to be there, to show up to work. Now, there's preparation that goes into it, of course, and there are segments to pre-tape, and there are conversations to be had. Like, it's a lot of work to do College Game Day, but Nick Saban is bringing in plenty of cash right now. He's not short on money anyway, and if you watch him on there, I think he's enjoying himself. He doesn't look like Desmond Howard or Kirk Herbstreit or Pat McAfee in terms of what a happy, joyous Nick Saban actually appears to be. But I think Nick Saban's having a pretty good time. So the sport didn't pass him by. The style of it did. And it hasn't been rectified yet, or at least adjusted in a way that I think most coaches would agree it needs to be. He's enjoying his gig. And I mean, West Virginia, come on. Just think these things through. Say them out loud. It was a ridiculous notion, but got me thinking, would he ever come back? I don't think he will. I don't think he needs to. I think he likes where he's at. Hard to not when you are sitting on that chair every Saturday morning. You're still around the sport you love. You still have a bully pulpit level of influence that you never know where that could lead in the future. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.